Hi, I'm Selena from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester, and I'm here with Linwood Barclay, who is a thriller author, and he's written many thrillers. And this year, I believe you've had two books that are coming out, and another one next year, at least another one next year. Is that correct?
Well, I had there was a thriller in the spring called "Take Your Breath Away." I have a
Mhm.
bit of a different kind of thriller coming out. I think it's just in the States. In the US, it'll be I think a paperback original that's either end of October or end of November called "Look Both Ways," and then there will be another regular thriller next May, which is tentatively called "Backstory," although that may change.
Aha. Okay. Interesting. Okay. And so for readers unfamiliar with your work, how would you describe what you write?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they're thrillers, they're mysteries. I think sometimes people categorize them or some of them as what we call perhaps domestic thrillers because they sort of involve families a lot. Although not all of the books do, but I think that what's pretty common in all of them is that like I don't write about generally don't write about police detectives or ex-CIA types or spies or anything like that. I write about very ordinary people who get caught up in an extraordinary situation that means that they are tested in ways that they never have been before. I like to say that when I read a Jack Reacher novel, which I enjoy a great deal, I'm never really that worried for Reacher because I know that anybody who comes in contact with these, he's just going to beat the crap out of them. But but in one of my books, my heroes are in no way prepared to deal with the kind of people that they're coming up against. So I think that's probably how I categorize them.
Okay. So what can readers expect from your latest book?
I'm sorry, what kind of?
What can readers expect from your latest book?
Well, I think from Take Your Breath Away, which
Mhm.
came out in May, it's another, I think, one of those kinds of thrillers where you really don't know what the heck's going on. I mean, that book opens with it's been 6 years since this fellow's wife has disappeared, and then one morning, 6 years later, at the place where he used to live, where they tore down the house and another house has been built in its place. A woman shows up there one morning and gets out of her car with having come from the grocery store as if she's only been gone for an hour. And she looks at this house sitting on this lot and says, "Where's my house? What happened to my house?" And then she gets back in her car and leaves, and her neighbor thinks that looks an awful lot like the woman who used to live there who vanished. And it's like, well, if it's her, where's she been for 6 years, and why is she acting as if she's only been gone for an hour? And if it's not her, then who the heck is it? And now our fellow who's what the husband, who for years the cops thought he probably killed her but never had enough on him. Now he's plunged into something of a mystery. And not only that, he has a new relationship, and it's kind of that kind of dilemma that happened in that wonderful Tom Hanks movie Castaway, where he's been missing for years. His wife, played by Helen Hunt, is now remarried, and he comes back. What do you do? To who? Where do your loyalties lie? So that's, of course, provided he isn't the killer, which we will have to take a while to find out. So that's that book. That's the setup for Take Your Breath Away. The one that's coming, which is called Look Both Ways, which is a little bit of a departure for me. It's a little more, I'd call it more like a Michael Crichton thriller. And in fact, I would describe it as think Jurassic Park, but instead of dinosaurs, it's self-driving cars. It's an island community, not unlike, say, Martha's Vineyard, not too far from you, where a big car company comes in to test their autonomous self-driving vehicles. And the best way to test them is if every car on the road is one. So everyone agrees to surrender their conventional vehicles to the mainland. Everybody gets for a month one of these self-driving vehicles. A virus gets introduced to the system, and basically every one of the cars become homicidal. It's like being on an island with 1,000 Christines. And so that's coming. And so that's the book that's coming later this year.
Uh-huh. Wow. So I'm going to let you let you choose which book you want to talk about more, um, and ask you what was the inspiration for the book?
Well, Take Your Breath Away, certainly the inspiration for that was I had an idea. Sometimes you get an idea for a scene, at least I do as a writer, or a kind of a what if situation. What if this happened or whatever? And I'd had this idea in my head I've probably written 3 books since I had the idea of this woman who comes to the house and looks at it and says, "Where's my house? What happened to my house?" Because the house on the site is not the house that was there when she left. And I just thought it was such a neat premise, but I couldn't figure out, well, what did happen? And so I finally sat down, I guess be a year and a half or more ago, and I thought, okay, what could it be? And I got out a notebook and I just started writing, could it be this? Could it be this? And once I ruled out, alien abduction, I thought, okay, I think it could be this. And once I, in my own head, had figured out what it was that happened and what the underlying mechanics were of the story, I started writing it. So that's where that one came from. A lot of times, ideas for books for me, there's just they just come out of nowhere. I mean, you wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and there's this great kind of a hook, a great what if. And then you have to sort of think, well, is that a good enough what if to sustain 100,000 word novel? Is there enough there? And so before I start writing, I kind of want to know what brought us to that point, what brought us to that what if situation. And if I have something on it, yeah, I think that works, then I'm away to the races.
Wow. Okay. So what were the steps that you took to bring it from initial inspiration to a finished product?
Well, like I say, once I had that idea, and this is kind of true for any of my books, once I sort of have what I want to do, I think I'll have a notebook and I'll start making notes about, who the characters might be and what's going on. I just kind of handwrite them out. And I might end up with, no more than 8 or 10 or less, fewer pages of just sort of scribbles. And I think that's just allows the idea to start kind of gelling in my head. And after I've done that for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 days, whatever, I just kind of get bored doing that and think, I just want to start writing this sucker. And because I usually have enough in the notes and in my head to carry me through 5 or 6 chapters. And so I'll think, I'm going to start writing it. And once I start writing it, then more of it starts to take shape in my head. And I mean, right now I started writing what will be the book that comes out in 2024. I started writing that last week. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I just thought, yeah, I'm just going to start writing it. So I started writing it last week, and I was just before we started chatting, I was working on it. I'm at like I have about 1/10 of a novel done, about 12,000 words or so, and now it's starting to take shape. And I kind of know now, probably by the end of today, I'm going to stop, and I may take a couple days and think, okay, where I need to sort of sort out more of it and how all the pieces fit together before I go too much further. I usually like to know where I'm going to end up when I'm starting a book. I don't want to fly by the seat of my pants the whole way. I want to have a general sense of where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So did you have to do much research for Take Your Breath Away?
I'm just trying to think if there was anything. I don't think there was a lot of research that I needed to do for that book. And I'm just trying to think offhand if there was. Not particularly. Sometimes it'll be little tiny things. I just sort of hit a point where I think, oh, what would that be? Or what, well, how would I get that right? Or where is that place located? And then I'll just, do the old Google thing and I'll sort it out. But in terms of a deep dive on research, I tend to write about the kind of people that I know and the kind of environments I'm familiar with. So a lot of research is not necessarily critical. Sometimes sometimes there'll be a book I'll do that I need to do research, and it's not typically sort of forensic or research that I need from a police detective. I mean, I did a book a few years ago called Fear the Worst, and my I had a rather unlikely hero in that book. He was a car salesman. And so I thought, I need to know more about that business. And I had two friends who were retired car salesmen. I took them to lunch and I said, just tell me everything. And they started telling me all this behind the scenes stuff about selling cars, so that when I was writing about that character's job, I could get a handle on things that you could only know from talking to guys. It's a funny story. Years ago, I was doing an event with Lisa Gardner, and she said, and she does massive research, and she went to, the body farm where they take people who've donated their bodies and they leave them out in the woods, and then they study the rate of decomposition and all that kind of thing. And she said that she went and she did this, and she saw the bodies, she did those, and she was so proud that she was able to do this, and she didn't throw up. And I said, well, I spent lunch talking to a couple of guys about how they sold cars, and I did throw up. But anyway, because it was really quite disgusting. But anyway.
I can imagine. So I was wondering if you had a favorite research story, and I guess was that it?
No, actually, maybe just off the top of my head, I did a book about 3 years ago called Elevator Pitch. And Elevator Pitch was about a very different kind of serial killer who was killing people in Manhattan by sabotaging elevators. And I wanted to do for elevators basically what Psycho had done for showers, and so I spent a good part of a day with a guy who oversees all the operations and maintenance of one of the tallest skyscrapers in Toronto, which is a hugely tall building, and did all this really cool stuff where we would be at like the 18th floor, and the elevator would be there, and he had this gadget in his hand that was like a big remote control, and we sent the elevator to one floor below but kept the doors open, so now we could look on top of the elevator, and we could put our heads, like we could look up the shaft, we could all this stuff. So just that was really fun. That was really interesting. And I started to learn about things about like elevator surfing, where kids figure out how to pry open the doors and they ride on top of the car and get up and down, all that sort of stuff. So that was fun. And that was a book where I also took a few liberties because I just, but the thing that was really cool was when he showed me this remote, like this thing in his hand, like an oversized TV remote that controlled all the elevators in the whole building and everything they did. And I said, wow, must be hard to get one of those sort of things. He said, oh no, you get one on eBay for like $500. I thought anybody else would find that a little unnerving. As a thriller writer, I was like, yes, that's so great, So,
that is scary.
yeah, sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that I would say that that would do it. Now I'm afraid to ride in elevators. Don't you?
To be fair, to know how to do the interface between this gadget and a building's elevator system is quite complicated. Like not anybody could just do it. But the fact that somebody could get one of these things, I was just like, hooray!
Only a thriller writer.
That's right.
Okay. So what was the biggest challenge that you had in writing and putting out Take Your Breath Away?
Oh gosh. I mean, it's so different from that for many. I mean, I do a book a year, some years too. And I think the challenge for any of them is you want to give your audience, give readers who know you want to give readers what they are hoping to get from one of your books without giving them the same book that they had last time. Mm-hmm. So you want to give them all those things they love, the twists, so forth, but you don't want to repeat yourself. So I think that's the challenge, is like, how can I do something in this book that's a little different or a different kind of twist than I've done before and have a different situation. So I think that's always the challenge. And, I find that, I love to think after, I don't know, what's 23, 24 thrillers or whatever it is I'm doing now, that it gets easier. But I make a new mistake in every book and have to think, no, I don't do that again, or that didn't work, and I need to do this. So I find you never stop learning, and you always you learn how to not make the mistake you made last time, but that means you just make a new one.
Okay. So what else can we expect from you in the near future?
Well, like I said, we've got the Look Both Ways, the self-driving car book is coming this fall. And then next year's book, which is coming out in May, is tentatively called Backstory, although that is still in question. We may have a different, but that one, this is an idea I really loved. It's about a writer who has, gotten critical reviews, nice reviews for the 2 books that he has done, but his sales have been rather weak, and he's unlikely to probably get another contract. But he gets approached with a very interesting offer. He's approached by someone from the Witness Protection Program who wants him to write backstories for relocated witnesses. That, he says, we're very good at protecting people. We're very good at finding them new places to live and setting them up and so forth, but we're not particularly creative. And these people need new backstories. They have new identities. They need a new sort of life to talk about that didn't really happen. And we're talking to you and some other writers, we want you to do this. And so he agrees to take on this project. And as you might expect, things go very horribly wrong. So that's that one. I'd been thinking for a long time of whether there was a series of books to do about sort of the Witness Protection Program. And a lot of stuff's been done about that. And I thought, I want a different angle for it, something different. And I thought, who comes up with the profiles for these people? And I thought, what if you went to a writer who was really good at creating characters and so forth and said, let's turn it over to you. And they find the right guy because his actual career as a writer is kind of, So that's the next one. And what's kind of the twist about it is that it's rather amazing that this particular writer is approached because he has something in his own background that bears some similarity to the kind of thing he's getting involved in now. So that's coming. That's Backstory. And right now I am, in this way to the future, right now I'm writing the novel that would come out in 2024, just getting sort of a head start on that. And I'm not going to say a word about it.
Right, exactly. Wow, that's great. Okay, now I have some questions about being a writer. What's your favorite part of being a writer on the whole writing and publishing process?
Being done, I think. There's something about when I finish certain steps, like when I finish my own first draft or whatever, and it's done. And then I just sort of, I keep a fairly tidy office anyway, but when it's done, I just sort of clear off the desk and everything's and I just walk away. I'm done for a while. So I think I really like that process. I kind of, in a way, like the part where I'm in right now, where I've come up with an idea for something new that I'm really excited about. So I can't wait to kind of get to certain parts and write it. But being finished is great. Is a very nice part. I think the worst part is when you send in that draft to your editors and are waiting to hear back. It's a bit like waiting to get test results back from a doctor. Is it good or is it a disaster? Because you're so close to it, a lot of times you just don't know. So that part is a bit agonizing. It's just, finally you get the email. And at one time I did a book, it's going back quite a few years. And this is when I still have an editor in New York and one in London. But this was before. We have a process now where those two editors kind of talk to each other and think, what do you think? What does the book need? And so forth. And then I get one kind of joint response. But back then, I would get one from the UK editor, and then I would get one separately from the US, and I get two different set of notes. And the US editor sent me a note one day, and she called me and she said, "Oh my God, I love it. It's fantastic. It's just such a terrific book. I love it so much." Next day, I heard from the UK editor, and he said, "I think you need to start over." So
No.
And the thing is, he was right. And it may have been a kind of difference of approach. It may have been that the US editor said, oh, I absolutely love it, but I do think it needs this, and this. Whereas the UK editor was like, it's a mess. It needs this, and this. And they both wanted the same thing. But he was more direct. He just thought, I'm not letting you down easy. This is a mess. And
Oh, interesting.
with that book just about killed me. But
I was going to ask you, do you have to do a lot of editing?
it depends on the book. I mean, there's always a lot of editing. There's always a lot of work to do on a book. I've had two books that required an immense amount of work. One was The Accident, and the other one was a book called A Tap on the Window. And I think, having been through a lot of work on them, I don't look back upon those books with sort of fond memories. And yet I think they're probably two of my best books, because the work I put into them, again, really did make them much better. So it really depends. I mean, the biggest book hit I ever had was a book called No Time for Goodbye that came out 2008, thereabouts. That book was a huge hit in the UK. That was the single best-selling novel of the year in the UK in 2008. Did hundreds of thousands of copies. And that book was just lightning in a bottle. I did so little editing on that book. It was just, the final version was so close to the original. But I wish that happened more often. Some books need a lot of work.
Okay. So what has been your favorite adventure during your writing career?
Well, there's two things. I mean, just in terms of a neat event, one time, my books did really well in France, and I did a book signing event on a train between Paris and Lyon. And my publisher was handing out copies of my new paperback to passengers on the train for free. They could come to the bar car and have them autographed. And so while that was happening, it was like, this is really cool. You know, that was a pretty neat event. But the other thing that's really is kind of, in a general sense, of ending up doing this for a living for the last 15 years or so, is that you get to meet some really cool people and have, you know, met and or sort of become friends with, you know, lots of really great writers and people like Stephen King and Lee Child, all these sort of people that you get to know and a bit, and that's pretty neat. And so I've really enjoyed that aspect of it too. And you know, I've book tours have, you know, not something of course I ever did in my career as a newspaper editor. And suddenly you find yourself, well, hey, we're going to Australia, we're going to New Zealand, we're going to France because they're making a TV series out of one of my books. And so I've afforded us an opportunity to get to places that we would otherwise probably never would never get to.
Wow. Okay. Now, what is the greatest lesson that you've learned thus far in your writing career?
You're not as big a deal as you think you are.
Okay.
You know, you always got something more to learn. You need another lesson and so forth. I think, you know, that's certainly one of them. And you know, and it's I mean, the great thing is it's a real privilege, I think, to be able to make a living at something you love to do. And that's one of the great things about being able to do the books. I love that. And on the worst days when it's just, you know, you're having a bad day, you have to take a moment and think, well, you know, I could be working in a bank or something, or I could be doing what I did when I was in my teens, when I ran a cottage resort and trailer park. One of my daily duties was to bury fish guts from the fishermen would clean out their catch and dump the rest of the fish that they didn't want anymore. They had stuff in a bucket, and I had to take that into the woods every day and bury it. So I have to think most days writing is better than that.
Mm-hmm. I would say so. So what piece of advice would you want to give to other writers?
Well, and that's interesting too, because every writer I know has had a different path. I think the first thing is you have to be a reader. I don't think anyone can be, you know, some people say, well, I don't have time to read a lot, but I would really like to write. That's like, well, I want to be a chef, but I'm not interested in eating. You know, or I'd like to be a musician, but I don't have any records. So I think you need to be a reader. You need to be, and I think it's really good to read lots of different kinds of things, because that's where you learn so much, you know, just by how other people do things. So that's probably number one. The other is you just have to kind of keep at it. I mean, I was writing novels in my 20s, none of which were published, and we can all be grateful for that. I was spared the embarrassment and so forth. But I mean, I was writing novels then. I didn't have my first novel published until I was, I think, 49. And because I was spent a career in newspapers, I was a columnist, a humor columnist, and editor for years at the Toronto Star. And you know, things take the path that they take, but you just need to be writing, and you need a thick skin, and don't listen when your parents read it and say it's wonderful. Pay no attention to that, because they love you and they have no sense of whether something's good or not. So if you know, if you tell some editor, well, I think it's good because my mom said so, that just means nothing, because like I say, they love you very much. What else could they say? So that's kind of, you read, just stick with it. It's not easy, you know, to get at a level where you want to be. It takes a lot of time. So,
So oh, sorry.
No, go.
Were there any groups or clubs or organizations that you'd recommend to other writers that might have helped you? Or, you know, you were talking about having your parents look at your stuff. Did you have any other people look at your?
No, I wrote my own stuff. I never belonged to a creative writing class. I never took a writing course. I didn't do any of that. When in the early 2000s, when I started working on a novel, I started hunting for a literary agent, and found one, and that's the way it went for me. I didn't go to, I wasn't in any writing groups or anything like that.
Interesting. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So now questions about you as a person.
Okay.
I'll do this quickly because I know you don't have much time. What is one thing that most people don't realize about you?
Oh, I don't know. Probably that I'm the glass is half empty guy. I never see that. I always think that if everything's gonna go wrong, I just think every book will tank, every book will sink like a stone. You know, it doesn't matter if you've had successes, it's always the next one that you have to be worried about. Maybe there's that. And also the fact that I'm a model train nerd, there's that.
That you're what? I'm sorry.
I'm a model train nerd. So I'm also
You know, a lot of writers are model train nerds.
Are they? Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's frightening or reassuring, but but yes, I do have that.
Ah, interesting. Okay. So what is or are your passions when you're not writing, and how do you make time to do the things you love?
Well,
From writing.
that's, you know, I mean, I think a book a year probably takes up about, in many ways, about 5 months of the year spread out, you know, 2.5, 3 months to write a first draft, then it comes back, and then a month on rewrites, and then some, you know, so there's still lots of time in the year that you can do other things. And so, you know, we like to travel some when it's not a pandemic. We're binge watching whatever the latest series is. We've got a place outside of Toronto, about 2.5 hours away, that, you know, on the water, that we try to get to just to kind of unwind and, you know, see friends and so forth. I mean, it's not particularly glamorous. It's just, you know, it's fun. You try to find these sort of moments of calm where you can, and just, I mean, nothing I probably enjoy more than anything else is when we get to other place, sitting on the deck, looking at the water, and just reading the latest James Lee Burger or something. You know, that's with some sort of drink at my side, a beverage, and Cheetos maybe, and that's all I need. And that's all I need.
Oh, that's great. All right. And what does your writing space look like? And what do you need to have around you when you're writing or editing?
Well, I have an office. I'm in it right now. It's just a lot of bookshelves and some crazy, lots of ridiculous toys, from sci-fi things from when I was a kid that I loved, posters, and and just weird stuff like that on the wall here. I've got framed original art by of Batman and Superman by the creators, and a nice big picture over here, a photograph of Alfred Hitchcock, who's something of an inspiration. And like I said, just a lot of books. The room's, and it's got. I look out onto the street. Right here, I'm looking at the street right here in Toronto, and so if the FedEx truck comes, I know they're here. And so it's a generally not. I don't have a cluttered environment. I kind of need I think some, for at least for me, when you're writing very complicated plots that are something like like you want parts of a Swiss watch to go together. I can't do something like that in the midst of chaos. I need a bit of an orderly environment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, do you need to have something special with you to drink or eat? Anything your favorite?
No, I just have you have some coffee when I come up in the morning. I think it's really interesting that there's so much kind of interest in how writer, like nobody asks a plumber, what kind of music do you listen to when you put together pipes? Nobody says to an accountant, do you have a certain place where all of your pens are lined up? Who cares? So there's a kind of this mystique about writers that I don't entirely understand, because it's just it's a job. It's just a job.
Okay. But there is one question I really want to ask you about that. Writers often have furry or feathered or otherwise non-human companions that either help or hinder them with their work. And do you have any of those? And do they help?
Perhaps pets is what you're talking about.
Pets. Yes, pets.
No, we have done. Part of that, I think, is because for a long time I was allergic to dogs and cats, although I grew up with having a dog and just love dogs. But I think my allergies are changing somewhat. We often look after our daughter and son-in-law's French bulldog when they are away. And so we have him here often. Of course, the hilarious thing is, I'm the one who has the allergy. And when he comes and stays with us, who does he want to be closest to? He jumps up on the bed and presses right up against me, and so I just take all sorts of antihistamine drugs and everything to get through it. But I don't have a furry friend. But my wife would really dearly love to have one. I said one time, if we were to get a dog, I would have to leave. And the family's response was, we would miss you.
I had a feeling that was coming. Okay. Now I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
One is, where can people find your work aside from Annie's Bookstop of Worcester? And I do have to do a plug for Annie's. After all, this is a video for Annie's. And you can get Linwood's books at Annie's. You can just call us at 508-796-5613, or you can email us at anniesbooksworcester.com. You can orders at anniesbooksworcester.com. So where else can people find your books?
Well, it's like they say, wherever books are sold, you hope.
Okay.
And if they're not there, most places can certainly order them. And there's the big evil Amazon and all those places so they're easy enough to find, and you should be able to get them. And any place that sells books, if they haven't got it, they can get it.
Okay. And my last question is, how can we follow your work and share your awesomeness?
Well, I have a Facebook author page. I'm also on Twitter. I'm on Twitter a lot. I love goofing around on Twitter. I actually have an Instagram page, although I never do anything with it. Sometimes my publisher does. I haven't figured Instagram out. And I suppose I should figure out TikTok, because then I'd be as big as Colleen Hoover. But I have not figured out TikTok. I'm not on TikTok. But I've got, and of course my website, linwoodbarclay.com, where I try to keep people up to date on things. And you can also subscribe to my occasional newsletter by going to my website. Keep you up to date on what's coming.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Linwood Barclay, for joining me. And if you ever do get to Worcester, Massachusetts, USA. We'd love to have you at our store.
That'd be great. Thanks, Selena. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.